Hello, thanks for tuning in. I'm Jim Roger.
I'm Kyle Dayton.
I'm Edward T. Martin.
And you're watching The Cutting Edge, Revealing the Truth. This is the show where you don't just hear them, but you actually get to see and experience the guests. Well, tonight is part 2 of a 2-part series of shows with Ralph Ring. Ralph is now in his 70s, but when he was back in the late 50s, early 60s, he was a research assistant to Otis T. Carr. And Otis T. Carr, by the way, as we mentioned in the previous show, was a Nikola Tesla protege. And together, Ralph worked with Otis as an assistant and a technician, and they constructed the OTC-X1, the OTC-X1 flying disc, and it actually flew. And in this part 2 of the show, we will return to Ralph Ring and get more of the details of a more technical nature in this show. So, but before we do, let's check in with Kyle Dayton. Kyle has some interesting news stories for us.
Well, I've got some information on some UFO sightings for this month from 3 different websites: UnitedStatesUFO.blogspot.com, also UFOs.about.com. Neither one of those have the triple W in front of them. And the third site is www.mufon.com. And I have a sighting here reported from October 2nd in Indiana. 2 witnesses saw a triangle-shaped object as large as a commercial airplane with rounded corners, making no discernible noise, slowly drifting approximately 100 feet in the air, with a white light in the front corner and a blue and red light at the back corners, tilted on its side and remained in that position as it flew straight ahead. On October 3rd in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, around 11 p.m., 3 people saw a massive triangle, again with 3 amber lights flying in the northeastern sky. We have October 6th near the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia in the evening. There were several witnesses to this, and it was reported that they saw a hovering sphere-like object composed of various colors, and it was slowly moving toward the western sky. We have October 7th, Exeter Township in Reading, Pennsylvania, or Reading, Pennsylvania. Yep. At about 6:15 to 6:45 p.m., 2 witnesses report that they saw a copper-colored object with a triangular yet rounded fuselage, was flatter than a blimp and with no apparent propulsion system, and it was hovering slower than a jet plane or helicopter, and it appeared to be intelligently guided. We have October 11th from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. Around 10:50 a.m., 2 witnesses saw a round white UFO with a noticeable bulge in the center. Was not an airplane, as many airplanes with contrails were in the area. The object was traveling north, very high in the sky, then completely disappeared into thin air. Interesting. Miami, Florida, the same day, but at 11:45 p.m., 1 witness was a student pilot who's also skeptical about UFOs. He reported, or she reported, an odd rounded shaped craft in the sky flying over the airfield, and it was dark, no lights in it, and it looked to be some kind of in stealth mode because it was like flying against the night sky, and apparently was using it as camouflage. All right, and we also have another one, October 12th, Warren, Rhode Island. A disc-shaped UFO was seen on a live webcam. And we also have in Gold Canyon, Arizona on October 14th, around 2:45, 1 witness reports a very fast-moving cigar-shaped, very bright object, about 150 to 200 feet long as its largest point. It was slowly climbing in altitude. It was steadily cruising at about 300 miles an hour plus, and it appeared to change shape from a cigar shape to a disc to a very condensed point twice, then it disappeared, and it did not appear to be typical military or civilian aircraft, although this sighting was near Williams Gateway Airport. And we also have one last one for tonight, but I had a bunch of others, but I just thought I would go on just the physical objects, not the star-like things or whatever. My last report on the sighting tonight was on October 15th, Anderson, South Carolina. This was slightly past twilight, extremely full bright moon with no cloud cover, and several witnesses apparently to this saw this within 500 feet. They saw a chevron or triangle flying with 3 very bright blue-white lights on the front tip and on the end of each wing, like a stealth fighter shape, but with less sharper edges, and it was smoother and more triangular. And they said that this object hovered in one spot with no discernible sound. Then it moved quickly in the opposite direction. So
Well.
keep watching the skies, because like our floor manager, George Park, says, you never know what you're going to see. So
That's
that
true.
just kind of proves it there, huh?
Yeah, thank you
So,
for all those interesting reports. An awful lot of activity out there.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate it. As I alluded to a few minutes ago, that Ralph Ring was a highly skilled technician. He worked with Otis T. Carr back in the late 50s, early 60s. And they constructed and built, along with other engineers and technicians, the OTCX-1 flying disc. So I think we'll get right into the material very quickly here. But by way of review, I think last week we talked about how Ralph, in the interview, mentioned the demonstration of the model, the smaller version of it. I think it was about 3.5 feet in diameter of the OTCX-1, the little one, and that flew. And in tonight's show, we'll learn more about what happens when they brought that disc to General Motors, and they didn't get the reaction they expected. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up in the show with regard to the OTCX-1. So, but why don't we first get right into material, and in clip number 8 of this series, Ralph talks about a demonstration of that prototype, the small prototype flying disc that they brought to General Motors. So if we're ready, why don't we just go right ahead and roll that clip, please?
Well, he was blowing me away. I knew some of this from my experiences and so forth, but he was really getting into it. And Tesla had taught all this to him. Well, he wanted to, we had a 45-foot craft that we were working on, and he said, you know, we want to get this out to the public, but before we do, let's take one of these small models. He made an appointment with General Motors representative, and we met down in Riverside at one of the big hotels, and we wanted to see if they would work with us to help us develop this technique of getting off the ground. We already knew what levitation was, how we could produce levitation, and we wanted to see if we could get GM's help to manufacture some of these. Well, we went down and took a small model with us. We took a couple of our engineers with us, and he had a battery of people there with cameras and notebooks and recorders, and we demonstrated and talked to him about circular foil discs or spaceships, and said that, you know, there'll be no more there's no need for pollution, there's no maintenance to perform on them, there's no cost involved once they're operational. And before we got too far, the guy said, no, this is too far out for us. You're attempting to overthrow the monetary system. This is how we make money, and we can't be doing those things. So back and forth, the car was trying in its gentlemanly way to convince the guy that with these we would ease the strain on the planet. We'd get things off the ground. We wouldn't have to put down a lot of cement and asphalt over the earth, and there would be no so-called accidents. Using magnetic fields, you can't have accidents. You can't collide with each other. And this was before the computer had got as far along as it is today. But anyway, he said, well, wait a minute, that's the insurance company. They wouldn't like that either. No accidents, that's money. And
there's an image of Otis T. Carr with a couple of other associates, Otis in the center, and very distinguished looking gentleman. And this, of course, these are old images. These go back to the 50s. So it was difficult to find them, actually.
I think it's fascinating that the executives had that reaction that they were talking about, the overthrow of the money system. Mm-hmm. And this reminds me that from some UFO cases, contactee cases, that I've read about, that the extraterrestrials sometimes have commented that our planet, the Earth, they've said that our planet is the only planet they know of that has a money system involving paper money and coins the way that we have it set up. We take it for granted, but it seems like a bizarre thing that they could not convince the executives that it would not overthrow the money system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they didn't get the reaction they had hoped for. You know, if you know, magnets, if the polarity is correct, they repel each other, so you wouldn't be able to have collisions. You wouldn't be bumping into each other. Of course, and if that happened, then you wouldn't sell any more auto insurance.
Right.
And
Or
we
any more autos,
Yeah.
the way they are. Sorry.
Yeah.
and it's easy to forget how big an industry that is, the insurance industry.
Oh yeah, it's huge.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you know, they really ruffled the feathers there at General Motors, and we'll find out a little bit more after they went back. I think they realized they better just hurry up with finishing up the big flying disc. It wasn't quite ready yet, and I think with the hostility that they experienced, I mean, in that meeting, they realized we better get moving on this.
Right.
And they did, and they went back. So,
Especially when they get accused of trying to overthrow the monetary
I know.
system.
yeah. So, anyways, in the next clip, Ralph recollects how the meeting actually did turn out in this next clip. So, if we're ready, let's go ahead and roll that clip, please.
At that point, I remembered Carr. We had a long talk one night. We're sitting out watching the stars, and he explained in great detail how Nikola Tesla had talked to him about this same principle and the trouble he ran into with that time the backer of all these things, J.P. Morgan on the East Coast. Tesla at that time was working with Westinghouse and Edison, and he developed the dynamo, and he was developing a lot of wonderful things in and around electricity, alternating current being one of them. And but he had developed the ability to transmit electrical power through the air without wires. And so when Morgan asked for a report on progress, he brought all this information to Mr. Morgan and said, there's no more need for any of this. We can give power to everybody with no wires involved and no telephone poles. And Morgan said, this is a monetary system. We have copper mines, we have forests that we cut down to make telephone poles, and we have copper wire running hundreds and thousands of miles. You're going to run everybody out of work, out of business. And Tesla explained, if you give people the freedom of meters, if you will, that will give them a chance to find out who and what they are, and they have natural talents that they can give us. They can give us, they are artists, they are engineers beyond our dreams, they are visionaries beyond our dreams, and we could get, well, Morgan didn't want to hear this, and he said, no, Tesla, we're not going to go that way. Just forget it. And he, at that time, had a laboratory in Colorado Springs where he was demonstrating this. And he wanted Morgan to come out there, and Morgan didn't want anything to do with it, but he was lighting light bulbs up 1 mile and 2 miles away through the air. And he said, I can put this pulse through the earth. I can use the canopy of electromagnetic field around the earth and produce electricity all around the earth, and no wires and no cost. Well, anyway, that's what Carr had reminded me of when we were sitting there talking to this person from General Motors. He was saying the same thing, that, you know, and so Mr. Carr said Tesla had told him, I may not make it in my time, because Tesla was very discouraged after that incident with Morgan. And so after that, he kind of faded into the background. He he saw that the system didn't want his technology. I may have got off the track here, but getting back to General Motors, he said, you know, Carr, if you put those blank things up there, we're going to shoot them down. You can't do that. We'll have a, you're not going to go anywhere with this. And Mr. Carr said, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. It looks like, you know, we're wasting each other's time to go any further with this, and we left. We left. Well, we knew the word was out then, and they knew approximately where we were, even though we tried to keep our whereabouts private and personal because we didn't want a bunch of looky-loos or government or anybody else interfering with our works.
And there's some images there. Upper left, you can see the 45-foot diameter craft near completion. On the upper right is the model, the 3.5-foot diameter, I think it was, model. And it's Otis, Carr, and other situations in the two lower photographs. Take it away, Carr.
Well, you know, it was just talk about trying to halt the flow of progress. You know, the GM rep saying,
Yeah.
you know, we'll shoot those things down when they see it. I wonder if, you know, when Henry Ford perfected the automobile assembly line, I wonder if that was the same kind of reaction that the horse and buggy manufacturers had. It's like, you know, no, we're going to shoot the cars as we see them, or this and that. I mean, it almost seems as ridiculous as that. But everybody knows, you know, they could only, you know, you couldn't halt the flow of progress. I mean, most people drive cars and not horse and buggy anymore.
Hostility.
So, yeah, really. So I mean, it's adapt or die. Adapt or be left behind, and that's how.
Yeah,
What I think about that.
I know. You know, when J.P. Morgan pulled the carpet out from underneath Tesla, I mean, that was the biggest disappointment of his life because Tesla had discovered how to distribute electricity without using cross-country power lines or wires, and well, heck no, that would really screw up the money system too, I guess, you know. And you know, it's the same deal with General Motors, same disappointment and hostility they met with, you know. But you're right. Yeah, they said they'd shoot the damn things down if they.
I remember in one of the movies about the life of Tesla, it's a theatrical movie. That is, it's a movie you can check out from a Blockbuster video or a place like that about the life of Nikola Tesla. And I remember the character in that who plays J.P. Morgan was just brutal about how he spoke to Tesla, and he was just very blunt, and he was saying things like, "We're not going to let them milk our cow for free. We're not going to. We're not our cow. We're not going to let them milk our cow for free," and saying that just really insulting things to Tesla. And of course, for someone as like Tesla, such a genius and wanting to help humanity, it must have just been terrible.
Yeah, having to go up against such arrogance.
By the way, public broadcasting, PBS, a few years ago came out with a wonderful, I think it's a 90-minute documentary about Tesla. It's called Tesla, the Father of Lightning, and you can get it through public broadcasting. It's just a fantastic biography of Tesla's life. He's really quite an unsung hero.
That's right.
In our next clip, Ralph reflects upon the influence that Tesla had upon Otis T. Carr. So, if we're ready, why don't we just go right ahead and roll that, please.
So he told Carr, I don't think I'm going to make it. You carry it on for me. And he taught Carr day and night, everything that he could, and asked him to carry on this and get it out to the people, because with free energy, free and abundant energy, we would have a life of pleasure and happiness and no more growling at each other, because we had everything we needed. And then we could create, all of us could create what we wanted in life. Well, so we went back to work, and Carr said, we've got to work day and night now to get operational one or two or more large craft, and then find a way that we can introduce these to the public. Maybe just fly them somewhere and set them down and then get up and disappear and move around the place so that people will know there's something out there that needs investigating.
I'm amazed by this, that they were actually getting that close to it, and of course they actually did complete this craft. So it just amazes me that that they did get as far as they did, and they had the success. They had success in actually completing the craft.
I think once they realized they had enemies in high places, they had to put the rush on. They had to, like Ralph said, they worked day and night once they returned from General Motors, because they knew they had, you know,
Their days were
enemies
numbered.
in high places, I
Yeah.
guess.
That's right, ruthless enemies.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Yeah. Okay. In the next clip, clip number 11 in our sequence, he talks about, Ralph talks about the maiden flight of the big ship, and mentions a little bit about the briefing they had before they actually flew it. So, if we're ready, let's go ahead and roll that clip, please.
So I was honored and privileged to be one of the people chosen to be on the first test flight of the OTCX-1. And this was a giant 45-foot craft. It wasn't elaborately polished with all the amenities and everything that we had later on wanted to put in them, but it was a very appropriate and functional craft. And before we tested it, we had a briefing period. Mr. Carr said, "Now, boys, we're going to go into the ethers here with this because it's something you don't. Your brain is going to go to sleep. Your brain is a computer that operates the body, and that's its job. And anything beyond or outside of that, it will it will take as an attack on its function. And so when you start talking about these things, it's going to reject it. So what I want you to do when you get on board, there'll be a big crystal ball, and I want you to just clear your mind. And we had been practicing this with meditations and things, so we knew what that meant. And don't think. If you think, you're going to short circuit it. You've got to just clear your mind and just relax, and we'll be in touch. And he was. We could hear his voice at all times. And he said, "Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to from point A, which you're at now, we're going to go from point A to point B, which is approximately 10 miles downrange, and you're going to get out of the ship when I tell you, and do certain things, and I'll tell you when you get there." So we got on board.
And they got on board, and we'll learn the rest in a few more minutes. But one of the things that Otis Carr mentioned to the crew, to Ralph, and I think there were three of them, Otis and two other fellows, was to keep a clear mind. And this is really etheric travel. And you know, if you pay attention to quantum physicists today, a lot of them talk about when human observation is involved with an experiment, it alters the experiment. And that's pretty well accepted in quantum physics. And I think that's what we had here. We had a device that was designed to travel etherically. And I guess you'd have to have for lack of a better term, a neutral consciousness.
Getting rid of your preconceived notions otherwise.
Right, otherwise you'd affect the journey.
Makes
Something
sense.
that ties in with this, for what it's worth, from the Billy Meyer case, that whenever the Playaran people are going to, for example, teleport Billy, they usually contact him in advance, but I remember a statement I read that Meyer said that for the teleportation to work successfully and safely, he has to clear his mind and have a really tranquil, clear mind, really tranquil, and once he's tranquil, then the teleportation can take place.
Yeah, that makes sense. It fits in with what Ralph was talking about here and what quantum physicists talk about as well. Okay, this brings us right up to the point where they were ready to board the ship and get in and do their maiden voyage or flight. And it was, Otis had scheduled a 10-mile trip, point A to point B, and back. So in the next clip, in clip number 12, we'll learn what happened on that first maiden flight. So if we're ready, let's go ahead and roll that clip.
This crystal, it had a bright, it must have been a laser, shining up from the water, intense, bright white light. And when it was turned on, the crystal glowed in like, it was 365 degrees of color. It went from infrared all the way around to ultraviolet in millions and millions of, frequencies to get her all the way around. And so he said, now we're going to go what we equate to here as this area 10 miles downrange. We equate it to the frequency of the color or light spectrum of aquamarine. That's what he was calling it. And he said, now I want you to relax and just watch the crystal and just clear your mind, don't think of anything. So we did, and this crystal started vibrating and pulsating in a beautiful, beautiful color that lit up the whole interior of the ship. And it finally got into this beautiful color of aquamarine, and the whole crystal turned to aquamarine. And Carr said, okay, boys, I want you to get out of the ship now and just follow my instructions. Well, we looked at each other, and we hadn't moved. As far as we were concerned, we didn't go anywhere. We didn't do anything. It was a beautiful light and everything, but and he said, just relax and just don't think. Just do it. So we got out of the craft, and he said, now I want you to pick up rocks and stones and sticks, put them in your pocket, get familiar where you're at, and then get back on board, which we did. All three of us picked up everything. And I didn't remember this, and I did in retrospect. Later on I remembered this, but at the time I didn't remember any of this. We got back on board, and then we sat down again, and Carr said, okay, that's the experiment's over. Come on, we're going to debriefing. And all three of us, I swear, we didn't go anywhere, and it didn't work. And when we got out of the ship, we said, it didn't work, did it? And he says, oh, okay, come on into debriefing. So we went into debriefing, and he said, I said, we didn't move. We didn't go anywhere. I know we didn't. And he says, oh, okay, well, check your pockets. And we checked our pockets, and here comes all these stones and dirt and sticks. And it boggled. He says, yeah, your brain is telling you it didn't happen. It couldn't happen, because it happened outside of its range. You went in and outside of time, which is called teleportation. And again, he explained what time was. It's just a beginning and an end of an experience. And that we're already everywhere in the universe because we're one full body of energy. All of us are the same energy, and we're everywhere. And we can teleport or transport through time with our minds. It's very simple, and we do it all the time.
You know, the use of the color frequency reminds me of the research in the 1930s of Dr. Rife, and when he created his different Rife microscopes, where I guess it was like the world's first electron microscope. He was getting 15,000 magnification of bacteria and viruses, and I mean that was phenomenal, even phenomenal nowadays. And he was able to magnify these disease-causing critters so large that you could see what color spectrum, what color they were emitting. So then they would zap these critters with the same color frequency, and they would, quote, devitalize them. Wow. And they had, I guess, 100% success cure rate with over more than 30 diseases, ranging from syphilis, tuberculosis, typhoid,
Wow.
all kinds of just absolutely phenomenal. And it had to do with the use of the same color frequency
Wow.
to, you know, and so I really think that the frequency medicine and stuff like that, like
Yeah.
homeopathy, where they get into like the vibrational
Yeah.
frequency of the cells, is something that our science really, really needs to catch up on.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, maybe they will someday. I don't know.
well, but that would upset the monetary system, because you know how big our medical system is now and how it works now. That would call for quite a few changes.
It's
You know?
huge, and the pharmacy, the pharmaceutical system, the
Yep.
whole system. Yeah.
Big business.
You know, it just dawned on me that, you know, one of the major instructions for this flight was don't think. So don't we think that possibly that a lot of our politicians would make great travelers? They're certainly not thinking these days.
Right.
Anyways, in our next clip, Ralph talks more on what is time, the illusion of time, as Ralph calls it. So if we're ready, why don't we just go right ahead and roll into that clip, please.
Even every human has this capacity. They have lost the realization that they do this. So they build in a past. Oh, I got here by driving my car or flying my plane. That it's just an illusion, because they got there instantaneously, but they build in a past. Oh, it took me 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever. And he said that's the reality of life. You're living in an illusion, and he really made that clear, that we are creative beings and we create our realities as we move on. So anyway, he said now on the clocks, and everything was on meters. We had everything was on scopes and everything, and we had we had witnesses where we, on the pod that we took off of, we had witnesses there that saw the craft raise up off the ground and get real shiny, like the craft that I said disappeared. It got a brilliant light for a split second and disappeared for about 5 seconds. And then it reappeared. And that was a whole journey. On our end of it, we were gone at least 15 minutes out there picking up rocks and stuff. And that was my time. And he said, time is not not the issue here. So anyway, and I'll round it off here. There's a lot more to it, but Carr said, well, we're getting there. We've had a successful experience and an experiment, and we'll get 1 or 2 ships ready for a full disclosure of what we're doing in such a way that we'll try not to violate any of their laws. We'll stay under 500 feet, et cetera, et cetera. But we want people to see this, to know that it's real, it's possible, that everyone is an immortal being, that we have this capacity to be and do anything we want. And Mr. Carr's job was to build spaceships, and mine was to build floating homes, and I'm going to do it.
I think it's fascinating that Ralph Ring had the memory that they were gone at least 15 minutes, that is outside of the craft, picking up the stones and so on like that. And then he was told later that they were only gone for about 5 seconds. And that differential about the time, it reminds me of a UFO case that I read about and heard about from Argentina. And I think this happened in the 1980s. And what happened in this case was that there was an Argentine Army officer who was reviewing his troops, and they were out in the pampas, the open grassland.
Yep.
And they had the troops lined up, and the officer was reviewing the troops, and of course he was clean shaven and very clean looking, and then while he was reviewing the troops, a disc came down through the cloud cover, landed nearby. The Argentine officer went over there to the disc in a fearless kind of a way and was welcomed aboard by beings, and the disc took off. About an hour later, the disc came back down, landed, he stepped out, and he had a beard. He had 5 days worth of hair, which and his men crowded around him, and they said, "What happened? You've been gone an hour." And he said, "An hour? I've been gone 5 days." And so there's that time differential.
Time
and-
manipulation.
That's right, time
The bending of
manipulation.
time, something,
That's
yeah.
right. And they ask the Argentine officer, well, what happened? Where did you go? And he described how that the extraterrestrials took him time traveling into the future. And they ask him, the soldiers ask, well, what did you see? What did they show you? And he just shook his head and he said, cosas increíbles,
Yep.
incredible things.
Yep.
He later talked with his superiors in the Argentine government, and then never talked with anyone
Wow.
later about the experience. But that time differential kind of a thing, I think that's fascinating.
You know, they allude to that in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster,
Yeah.
with the missing time and what have
Exactly,
you. You
yeah.
know, and I was thinking too with with people that are disbelievers of
Yeah.
UFOs and certain things like that. A Sergeant Major retired
Yeah.
Robert O'Dean mentions an incident where there was a sighting on a beach. There were many people on the beach, and they saw some kind of disc hovering there, and there looked like there were
Wow.
humans or something in the disc. So the people on the beach waved, and the people in the craft waved back. So, you know, I don't know what you.
I remember
Kind of
another.
interesting there. Yes, sorry.
I remember another case. There was a UFO case from New York State, from I believe it was upstate New York, and it happened not too many years ago. And what happened in that case was that a man was at his home, his country home, with his family. It was late one night. He decided to go out and look at the stars. So he was in his pajamas and bathrobe and sandals, and he opened the living room door to step out into his yard, which was by a lake. So it was at night. He stepped out, and there was a bright light that appeared and came and landed, and it was a disc, a glowing disc. He walked over. There were beings that welcomed him aboard,
Yeah.
and then they traveled in time, and they went into the past, about 300 years in the past, landed at the same lake. Of course, no houses. His house was not there. No other houses. He got really upset, and then they went several hundred years into the future. Landed again at the same place, same kind of thing, no houses there. He got really upset again. He said, I've just paid for it, where is it? And then they came back, and it was about only maybe half an hour after he had left. In fact, his wife had gotten up, and she found the door was unlocked, and she thought how foolish her husband was to not lock the door. And so she locked the door. This man had to throw stones up to the bedroom window to ping on the window to wake his wife up. So he traveled
Wow.
backwards and forwards in time, but just gone half an hour.
Interesting. Very interesting.
That's almost enough to make you think you're losing your mind, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, in Ralph's interview here, up to this point, you know, they finally got the big craft constructed and built. The first flight, it didn't have all the finished amenities that they had originally planned, because they had to do a rush job to get it flyable. And they flew it, and meanwhile, the enemies that they now have with had with General Motors start to take action, I think, because in the next clip, this is where trouble with the authorities comes into view. So if we're ready, let's go ahead and roll that clip, please.
Well, I guess General Motors and other people, the looky-loos around the area, because we had brilliant lights that would shine at night around our facility, and they got curious. Anyhow, it wasn't 2 weeks after we met with General Motors that these people showed up in all kinds of vehicles, vans and stuff, and they had badges, FBI, CIA. They had a whole bunch of people, and they had people with guns, machine guns, if you will, or you know. And they said, "We're here to shut you down, and you're hereby shut down." And we asked them the charge, or where's the warrant, or whatever, and they said, you're charged with attempting to overthrow the monetary system of the United States, and we're going to have to close you down now. And they went in and took our records out of the offices, took our stuff out of the shops, they took the small crafts, and later on they took the large craft. And we didn't know where. It was years later that I found out they took it to Los Alamos, New Mexico. And to this day, as far as I know, it was on the 9th level down. There's an underground facility that goes down, and it was on the 9th level of that facility that was told to us by, I don't remember his name, but he was one of the people that had the Need to Know Act. That was when the Need to Know Act came out, they had to reveal certain things, and he was a professor, and he had gone to there for other reasons, but when we were listening to him, he said he was down on this 9th level and he noticed this big craft, and it was the OTCX-1. So that's when I knew where our craft had gone. And they had told us in debriefing, the agents, whoever they were, said, you're not allowed to talk to this, you're not allowed to get back together, you're not allowed to do anything, we're going to be watching you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they broke us all apart.
I've heard again and again through the years that the United States government plays hardball when they want to. And I've heard a lot of stories about ruthless behavior, but this is really shocking that, that the federal people showed up and they said you are attempting to overthrow the monetary system of the United States. And they had machine guns and so on, as Ralph Ring was describing. And they said that we're here to shut you down, that is to close that operation, and basically to erase the operation, that is to confiscate all of the materials, the written records, to confiscate the craft, to just shut the system down. And that's a profound charge, that is to say that someone is attempting to overthrow the monetary system of the United States.
That's kind of like the government getting you on tax evasion or something, putting you in federal prison if they get you for nothing else.
Yeah.
That's what they did to Al Capone too. Couldn't get him on anything else, but they got him on tax evasion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the name of the let's see, Oregon Energy.
Yes, Wilhelm Reich's
Wilhelm
research,
Reich.
yes.
And
And the
didn't,
cloud buster research in the Oregon, yes.
right, didn't Wilhelm Reich end up in a federal prison?
I think so,
On
and he
some kind
died
of-
like 1 week before he was going to be released, and they
What
said,
was
well,
the
he had
charge,
health
do you know?
problems and what have you.
I'm trying to remember. It was some kind of a trumped up charge, the way I understand,
Yeah.
that Reich was accused of conspiracy against the United States government or something like that.
Wow.
And I think the charge was being contested back and forth, and of course I think his records and his research was all confiscated, just like
I heard
at Tesla's death. I
Yes.
believe that the federal people went into the hotel in New York City and confiscated all of Tesla's materials they could.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, there is some
The
documentation
very
from...
day he died.
That's
the day he
right.
died.
And there is some of Tesla's research that is considered classified under military classification, and it's top secret kind of thing, even to this day.
Wow.
And concerning Los Alamos, that I was the last time I visited Los Alamos was about a year or so ago, and of course, as you know, there's the huge research facilities, scientific facilities, and not only I'm told that not only are American scientists working there, but scientists from various countries all over the world, European countries and other countries, and there are a lot of mysterious stories about underground levels at Los Alamos, New Mexico, just as the mention was made in the clip of the 9th level of the object put in the 9th level underground at Los Alamos. And of course, Los Alamos was where the Manhattan Project was
born.
predominantly. I think that was the center of it, the project to make the atomic bomb in World War II.
And they actually broke this group up, and I told them, don't associate with each other, don't see each other, because they didn't want this coming back. It seems like, every so often somebody comes along with a really good invention, or whatever. Tesla was another one. Other people have invented carburetors they claim that had, that would give your car an enormous amount of mileage. Seems like every time something good comes along, the system that we live in won't let it happen.
Right.
It's like you hear about it once in the news and then you never hear about it again. I don't know if somebody's buying up the technology and it's silencing these people or what.
I know it.
I know of a case in Texas about mysterious technology. In other words, there was at Fredericksburg, Texas, in the Texas Hill Country, there was a family in the latter part of the 1950s who bought a new car. I think it may have been an Oldsmobile, but I've heard this story from a number of people in Fredericksburg, Texas. They bought that new car. They were going on a family vacation trip to California. They got it filled up with gasoline, headed out from Fredericksburg, Texas, and to their amazement, the gas meter would just barely move. They got all the way from central Texas out to Southern California, less than 1 tank of gasoline. and then they refilled the tank in Southern California at the end of the vacation, drove back to central Texas, and the story was that when they arrived back at their home in Fredericksburg, Texas, there was a committee, a group, including 2 or 3 policemen. I think the county sheriff was there with 1 or 2 other policemen, and then there were officials from Oldsmobile, I think it was an Oldsmobile, officials from the motor company, and a number of people there, and they were playing hardball. They said, your car was sold to you, that's an experimental model that was sold to you, given to you by mistake, and we have another brand new one to give you, but this one does not belong to the public. This is an experimental model, and they took it back.
You know what? He may have, if he had a really good lawyer, he might have been able to beat that.
He might have been able to, but they were
that was the car, the serial numbers, everything was in agreement legally.
Right.
I think if he had a good sharp lawyer, he could have beat them.
They were so, of course, they were trying to cooperate with the police and with the people from the car company, and so they cooperated. But I believe those people were telling the truth.
Yeah. You know, it's like anything that's good, they don't want the public to have it, or they keep it under wraps for special people.
Right.
Probably.
You mean not us? In
Not
other
us.
words, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, in our final clip, Ralph has some final words as to his dream, this project, his dream, and is it still going on, or where is it going now? So if we're ready.
And so I wanted to find a place that I wouldn't be bothered. I tried it around where I was living, and it got impossible. There was too many people, too many distractions. We met a Walter Baumgartner who wrote a book called Energy Unlimited, who said, well, let's take it over where I'm at. I'm in Magdalena, and I'm in Albuquerque. I've got some land out there where nobody can get near us, and we'll build some ships out there, which we did. And we went back and forth to Albuquerque for months and months developing craft out there. Well, anyway, to this day, I'm still trying to get the ideas across to people. Incidentally, the crafts that we built in New Mexico didn't work because Baumgartner, although he was a brilliant scientist, he didn't. Ether technology is like I think the word is symbiotic. You have to, like we tuned into the crystal, that's what helped make it teleport us, because we were a part of the experiment. We were a part of the thing that made it work. And Baumgartner didn't quite understand that you know, you have to tune in with your power so that we have of concentration to make it work. Well, I guess that kind of rounds it out. There's a lot more that I've done since then. There's some groups that I'm involved with now that we will develop floating homes. We will develop spaceships, and it's in the very, very near future. Within a year or two, you're going to see things on the planet that you've never seen in eons. They've always been here, and as I tell my friends that are interested in my field, that once I remember where I parked, I'll show them where it is. And this has to do with the consciousness to be able to see what I'm talking about, because they can't believe me with their brain. And that's about it.
Well, you know, I think it's very fortunate that there are still existing photographs of the OTC-X1 and also a photograph of the billboard still in existence and still in the public realm. Speaking of...
Yeah, we have a few photographs here. This is the small one, the 3.5-foot diameter model that actually flew, they built. And this here is actually
Upside down.
a billboard.
Yep.
I mean, Mr. Carr was so excited about the project, he even advertised it on a billboard to an unwanting world, actually. So these are very old. And also, we have some others here. This is the
big one.
the 45 under construction, so you can see through it. The 45-foot diameter OTCX one, the big version. And this here are some of the construction details of the craft. And by the way, you can go to projectcamelot.org, I believe, and the entire Ralph Ring story is there with a lot of these images too. You can pick them up in different parts on the web, but that's one I remember. And here's more technical details about the interior of the craft. It's hard to do this on television. You need to look at it closely yourself to really get the gist of what they're doing here. And let's see, yeah, it's a magnetic arrangement. And this is another invention of the Ultron electrical accumulator.
Yes.
Was one of the devices used in that ship, and I guess he had patented that. And again, we already saw this one. This is the model, the 3.5-foot model. That's where we started. So there's a tremendous amount of information on Otis T. Carr, Ralph Ring at projectcamelot.org.
Have you been to Fort What? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you if any of you have been to Fort Huachuca Army
I've been
base
there many times.
in near, it's at Sierra Vista, near
Yeah.
Sierra Vista.
Yeah.
We took a little tour there one day, and I noticed, interesting, they have a big building there, and on the building it says Electromagnetic Research Building. And I would just love to see what kind of research they're doing back there with electromagnetic or electrogravitic technology. I mean, because the way that some of the technology is with the you know, stealth bomber and this and that, what have you, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump before, you know, what if they just turned them into a round vehicle? I mean, the way that they fly is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know, Fort Huachuca, by the way,
yes.
down in Sierra Vista, Arizona, is the Army intelligence capital for the world.
Oh, right in our own backyard. That's
right
very
in our own
interesting.
backyard. And Stephen Greer publicly says they have a captive alien.
Really?
There.
Huh.
And they're not talking about people coming over the border alien. They're talking
No,
about an
extraterrestrial.
otherworldly alien.
Right, from elsewhere.
Bad joke.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about UFO Magazine, Kyle?
Yes.
And then Ed's got some information.
Yes, got
on
a
this.
quick one. UFO Magazine.
Very quickly.
They have, the current UFO Magazine has a mention of astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell's public mention that, yes, we have been in, our government has been in touch with aliens from other places, and the technology is real, what have you. And before this, Dr. Mitchell would just allude to it and say, yes, I believe it's possible. But he actually said on Kerrang or Kabang, a radio show, yes, this is real, absolutely real. And also, the cover story is on the late Earl Fulford and his role as one of the people that went and picked up the debris at the Roswell incident. And before he passed away, he basically spilled the beans, you could say, and talked. So this is very, very interesting, UFO Magazine.
Thank you.
Thank
Ed,
you.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks.
What's happening with your movie?
Paul Davids,
Tell the audience what it is, too.
yes, the movie is Jesus in India, and it's a film by Paul Davids, and of course we know Paul Davids because he was one of the two executive producers of the movie Roswell,
Yes.
which starred Martin Sheen, Kyle MacLachlan, Dwight Yoakam. It came out, I believe, in 1996 on the Showtime channel, and Paul Davids has made an agreement, an arrangement with the Sundance Cable TV channel so that our movie, Jesus in India, which is based on my book, King of Travelers, Jesus Lost Years in India, that our movie, Jesus in India, will be coming out, showing on December 22nd on the Sundance cable TV channel,
Yep.
and it will be showing at 9 in the evening Eastern Time,
Okay.
December 22nd. They will show it again on the Sundance Channel on December 26th.
Okay, very good.
Great cover, Ed.
I hear
Thank
the
you.
music. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching the show, and a special thanks to Ralph Ring for the interview. So until next time, so long for now. Thanks for